podcast focused on trends shaping the future of manufacturing. I'm Alexandria Bjork, your host, here with AW Schultz, two thought leaders with a passion for people and manufacturing. Today and every episode, we are diving deep into the advancements, sustainable practices, and dynamic changes transforming how we produce everything.
And now welcome Alexandria Bjork and AW Schultz.
Okay, Alexandria, this is our first podcast ever, and this is Factory of the Future.
Yeah.
We are semi-recording this. We have the rights to edit it at future lengths, but really we were trying to decide like where do we start our baseline story at?
Yeah.
And I'm the introverted person, but I'm talking, it seems like. But we met at a conference in Orlando. We're in Orlando.
Yeah.
Yep. And we were both speaking there.
Yep.
And you had messaged me through the app.
Yep.
And I honestly, I didn't see it until you had actually saw me getting ready to get to the airport. And then I saw your message, make sure you were okay. And then as a person, and saw you on LinkedIn, and then saw you're a decent person. And then
Not just a crazy
we
person
continued
on
to set up a
coffee.
meeting
Like,
and talk.
hey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess what we did is you were just reaching out. You liked my mission or what I was talking about. You attended my speech, and it was like, what can we do together to work together?
Yeah.
And you're already doing a podcast.
Yeah.
I've been on a couple of podcasts, but I've never actually hosted my own. So we're doing it right now.
Yeah.
Same recording. And we've been talking about for probably a month how we're going to orchestrate this, put together. And then we decide, you know what, let's just go live right now.
Yep.
And that's where we're at right today.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
I mean, your speech at Accelerate, hosted by Fluke Reliability, was a great speech. I remember complimenting you on that. And then after we had started getting to know each other, you were like, they rearranged everything essentially. I was going off the cuff. Things were out of order. And I was just
That was
like,
my draft.
could not tell. Yeah, could not tell. And that really stood out to me as somebody who can, who knows what they're talking about, who is passionate and can roll with the punches. So I was immediately drawn to that. I think what we both saw in each other is kind of this complementary aspect. And, like you're doing all these amazing scholarly things. And I'm just like starting well before I'm ready on just about everything I'm doing. And I think that blend and like that network just really made a lot of sense for us to get to know each other. And I think in preparation and decision to launch the podcast, we've been finding out all these like individual things that we really truly do have in common. And I think it's just going to be really exciting to see this unfold.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you.
Yeah.
And just a little backstory. We both come from a manufacturing experience background. So it's kind of fun to talk about that. And what Alexandria was mentioning is that, I'm doing some scholarly work. So I'm always looking into finding what's new and trending. And I'm forced to, I have to read a lot of stuff. So we thought we'd come together as a podcast using Alexander as the kind of the host and the questions person. And I'm kind of this is what I learned. This is what I learned. This is what we're going to share.
Yeah.
And we've got a big breadth of agenda that we're going to be going over, beginning with what I had talked about was Industrial 5.0.
Yeah.
And I don't know, what do you want to say?
Let's talk about it. I mean, tell people, because I was, as we were preparing for this, I think that's what's really making, that's really letting our personalities shine through. I think your passion and pioneering in this space is incredible and important. And I was relieved to know that this is the trend of the future. And, I had not heard of what industry or Industrial 5.0 is. up until the day that I heard you speak. So why don't you share what, educate us all on what is Industrial 5.0?
Yeah. So I guess we'll go back to like the early part of what got me into it is I was working on my next book, and I was trying to put together items on motivation, transformation within manufacturing. And as I'm doing this research and pulling all this information together, it stumbles upon me some of the work that's been done in Europe, particularly. And it was within that research, it just kind of really just surprised me that there's a term for it. Now, Industrial 5.0, there's, as you might imagine, there's also four others. We're gonna say that for another podcast. But it's worth saying that Industrial 4.0, those come from the manufacturing background, probably already know this, but it's about digitization. It's about taking artificial intelligence, but pulling all that data up in the cloud, running that data down, running algorithms on it, and maximizing efficiencies. Now, that's being said, it's very powerful. But in 2021, when stating the facts here, the European Commission was asked, how can we evolve and take factories and supply chains and other things and offer them, making the next step to help reduce CO2 emissions. Yes, greenhouse gases. And they reached out to what I call a think tank, which was the ESIR, which is the Economic Society of Research and Development, something around that lines.
Yeah.
And they came back to the European Commission, and they determined for us to meet that agreement, which was the 2000, I'm not going to say the exact date, so I'm not going to say it, but an agreement between the European Union and other nations to be net zero by 2050, we would be evoking on our next evolution to move into a revolution, which we'll talk about that another time. But the idea was to make that thing stick is based on three principles. The first is taking all that digitization, that Industrial 4.0, that resilient stuff, and putting it out there. But the other three parts to drive it, to bring alignments for corporates and governance, is the idea of sustainment, and also probably the important part is, which I talk about, and I go into quite a bit of detail in my presentations, is it has to be in a human-centric approach. So you're thinking about that, is that my dogs are fighting each other.
Well, we are dog lovers here. So,
We are dog
obviously
lovers.
we've got
I
some
got two.
we've
They
got
probably make
additional
cameo.
co-hosts. We've got additional co-hosts. They come in, they serve their purpose.
He's biting my toe. And the idea was that the theory is to bring those together, there would be three aspects to it. And they termed it Industrial 5.0 because we would be involving our next evolution on it.
Yes.
And that's something that just resonated with me. And the understanding, some come from you and I come from a manufacturing background, is that's something that's always struggles, is driving that motivation and transformation in the manufacturing background to a human-centric approach. That if you want sustainability, you got to be able to ask, what's in it for them? And that's kind of what Industrial 5.0 means to me. And that's what's driving some of the discussions that I'm having right now. I
Yes.
just got bit on the toe.
And to add to that, one of the things that I find fascinating, and one of the greatest, I would say, experiences as being in manufacturing, but just generally in business, is having the opportunity to learn from some of the best change management professionals in, I would say, the space, from having the experience of driving change in organizations from day one of my career to now. And it's always, the only time it's ever been successful is with the proper engagement of the people that the change affected. And that's where I was drawn like a moth to light or whatever to what you were talking about in really recognizing, giving a name for, and creating this whole next view of what industry will be. And with the human-centric approach, I just thought this is really going to make waves. This is really going to change how we do business. I would hope that in certain ways it would maybe even bring manufacturing back to the United States that might have been lost, and like a bunch of other amazing who knows what doors might open as a result of some of this stuff. So um you know now that we kind of have like an idea of what is industry 5.0 with this human-centric approach, what do you think like the current state is? Like I personally know I have a skewed approach or skewed vision because I've got a small um my experience has been with one company, but I would like to know what you see, kind of as the current state, but then also how this shapes how the industry 5.0 can shape the future here.
Yeah, you know, it was interesting. Alexander, we were at that conference, and there was people from all over the world there.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there with one day having lunch with some of the people from there. They're from Europe, different parts of it. And it was amazing. They were talking about how the regulations that are being imposed as far as energy goes, in household setting. And I'm from Texas, you're from Wisconsin, and we don't see that. We don't see that. Um, the biggest alteration that we probably see at this point is there's electric cars out there now, and um, that's probably the biggest change we've seen. And there's been a lot of talks about government involvement and corporations. So a lot of the larger companies, and in fact, I just did some research on this, that the biggest the companies that are most driving some of this change as far as becoming more green, or the reduction in CO2 emissions, are the big companies. The small ones, they don't necessarily have that capabilities yet,
Right.
or they don't have the motivation to do it. It's the
Right.
bigger companies that they want to see a resonance of what they can um, transfer and show that they're conscious of the future. So that's what I find was what's interesting, is that while Europe is, I'm going to say, a little bit of ahead of what's going on in the US. Um, but it's coming. I mean, I've worked for many corporations, large corporations, and they're already making segues into it even before the
Yeah.
term Industrial 5.0 existed.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wonder, like, for anyone who's watching this, maybe they're the frontline factory worker, maybe they're um, you know, maybe they're the CEO or the business owner of this manufacturing. What do you see like, how do you see this benefiting them? Like, how do you see this helping to make their business better? When I was doing DOT compliance and working with companies to help bring them up to industry standard, I always went in with this idea and true belief at my core that any company that is running top notch in terms of DOT compliance is going to be profitable, because they're not going to be spending money on downtime with downed maintenance because they're doing the DOT standards. They're not going to have a subpar or B or C class workforce, because the people who pay attention to details and don't have those violations are going to be your best top tier drivers. All these things that DOT compliance kind of sets as a minimum standard. If you're hitting that and above, your company is just going to be all that much more efficient and effective. So that was always my approach when I was consulting with the DOT compliance space. What would you say to our industry leaders about what this means for them and the benefits to them?
I just read an article the other day, and so I have to read peer articles, which is the bronze label
Yeah.
of articles, and it just said there's still insufficient proof that focusing on sustainability can lead to profitability. And I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but um, no, I want to focus on the facts.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of facts showing that there's profitable means to say, let's become green and we're going to make more money. Um,
I wonder
th- th-
though, I almost wonder about that though, because when in reading or listening to Elon Musk's controversial as he may be for whatever reason or whatever many reasons, I mean, you could make the case that he's Tesla and
yeah,
the solar and all the other things that they're doing is profitable and it's sustainable to a certain degree. Maybe,
yeah.
maybe not. I don't know everything that goes into it, and I'm no expert in that, but just from an outsider's personal perspective, it seems like that might be something you could maybe look into and we can get back to in terms of like examples of really profitable companies. Is it a critical mass? Is it economies of scale that takes sustainability um to profitability? Is there a certain threshold that needs to be met? I don't know. I wonder.
No, I mean, it's not, you're right on. And when I read it, I was a little bit surprised too, but
Yeah.
this is a legitimate article, and the sources they're coming from were credible. Um, I mean, it's a question: is Elon Musk's work an outlier, or is this the trends? And I hope it's the trends. I really do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, he's in an organization that circles around technology on it. There's a
Yeah.
lot of other organizations out there that they what they make and what they produce, there is quite a bit of waste into it. I mean, you think about the oil industry back in the 50s and 60s. We were trying to find ways to what we're going to do with this stuff called gasoline, and then we found a reason that cars can run on it. And
Yeah.
then they found other means of jet fuel, and when we
Silicone.
extract all this other extra thing, vinegar. I mean, it's they maximize the full amount of this resource, which is, by the way, creating a lot of CO2 emissions as it goes into the atmosphere. But it's they've been very innovative throughout the years. So I mean, I look at that as some of the examples that we can definitely talk about and approach to.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that segues perfectly into what we had planned to talk about in some of our upcoming episodes, like kind of these quantum leaps from industry one to two to three to four, and this kind of like forced innovation that brought us into the new era. So I almost feel like it'll be interesting or it would be worthwhile talking about in the next episode kind of the progression of the industrial revolutions and some of the key innovations that allowed us to move from one to two, two to three, three to four, and what you might see from four to five. So I
There's
feel
even
like,
talks about 6 and 7.
oh, whoa, I didn't even
Yeah,
know that.
yeah.
That's like a real excitement. So I definitely think that
A
those need to be our
teaser.
yeah, teaser, no kidding, no kidding. I think that we're right around time, if I'm not mistaken. So are we clocking out? Are we
I think
are
this
we
is our
out?
clock out for our first episode,
Yeah,
and my dog has stopped chewing on my
of
feet.
course now.
Of course, now, I hope it works out okay. This is Factory of the Future, and we are out of here like finished goods. Stay tuned for our next episode of Factory of the Future, where we're exploring groundbreaking techniques and behaviors that are reshaping industrial landscapes. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review and help others discover the cutting-edge insights transforming manufacturing as we know it.